Okay, and let me start sharing my screen. Screen share. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you for confirming. Let me close. Oh, actually, I had the notes I do need. Take that here and then put this here. Great. Cool. All right. So let's start with like a discussion. I actually want it to be more discussion based, and then at the end we do an exercise. So first of all, thank you for being here. Today we'll cover the box model, which is something that we saw during core. Today the idea is to understand it a little bit better, and then maybe fill in some of the gaps that might exist. So first of all, let's start with like, what do you understand by the box model, or what is the box model? In fact, in an interview, especially if you're doing a front end engineering interview, you might get asked, "What is the box model?" What would you say? Anyone, just unmute yourself and jump in.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. So in an interview, you might get asked, especially if it's a front-end engineer interview, you might get asked, what is the box model? What is the CSS box model? What would you answer?
Is that something that has like a height and width?
Okay, something to do with height and width. That's correct. What else?
Borders, padding, stuff like that.
Okay. Box model. That is correct. Let's do CSS box model. Okay. So we're saying, I think I heard you say, width, height. Deja, could you repeat what you said?
Whole rectangle, like the margins, the borders, then the pattern, padding, and then the body, or it's not the body. Is it the body? Yeah.
Let's call it the content.
Okay.
Margin, border. Yeah. Okay. So all this is related stuff. That is correct. Anything else? Anyone wants to add? Joanne, what would you say?
No, I was thinking of box shadow.
Okay. Box shadow, not directly related to the box model, but well, actually it is. We'll come back to the box shadow. Yeah, the box shadow is interesting. Also, something I would like to add here is box. No. Go ahead, Sam.
How about the background color?
Background. These are like, okay, so these are CSS. These are CSS properties that have something to do, that we have to have in mind for when we're thinking about the CSS box model. Background, and then what was the other thing that I was going to put here? I completely forgot. Yeah.
Padding earlier.
One more time, John, padding. That's correct. Padding. That's correct.
I have a question. If you said this is CSS property, is that you mean when we said like when we said the div?
Say that one more time.
I said, if you said that's the CSS property, Is that when also when we say like is a div?
I think you will need to give me an example. I'm not sure I understand the
When you
question.
put an element in the div and then you can size the div, for example, for 50%.
Yes, that's correct.
Also a box model.
Repeat that last part.
Is that can be also a box model?
Okay. Yes. So it turns out that everything in CSS or all the elements that we can grab with CSX to style are boxes. And that's what the box model is about. And we'll see that in a second. I think here I wanted to put completely forgot border box. What is this? Box sizing. Box sizing. Okay. So let's take a look at the add some official documentation. So let's do border box. No, CSS box model. And I was doing some research on this. Actually, hold on. Let's see this one. Okay, so the CSS basic box model is what determines the size, the position, and properties of these boxes. So each element, or more specifically, so the box model is when the browser is drawing all the elements in the screen to be displayed, right? It turns out that each element will basically be a rectangular box. And that rectangular box follows the rules set by the CSS basic box model. So today we're going to review the CSS box model and what that is, right? So also, like, the CSS box model in sort of broad terms is not any particular thing. It's a set of things that define a box, and each element in CSS is a box. So yeah, and then we'll come back to the original sort of question, like what if you get asked that in an interview? But even that, so actually from here, I want to jump back here, and I'm going to share this at the end. So the box model is what says in CSS that every element in the web is a rectangular box. And this is sort of key for us to understand if we want to put in a layout for a web page. Understanding the box model well will help us lay out those elements in the way that we want without unexpected, and sort of understanding why we're getting the results that we're getting. Some of you, what are some actually, yeah, what are some, whenever you're creating a layout of a page on one of your apps, what are some layout issues you might have run in the past? Does anyone remember any layout issues you might face when you want to put like elements in a certain place, or having them have a certain width? Anyone recalls an example?
Yeah, to center sometimes an element in the inside the box.
Okay, so like centering, yeah, so centering, maybe that's something that we'll touch on here. Let me take note of that. So centering an element inside of a box. And we'll see how, depending on how we understand the box model, we could do this in different ways. So, okay, any other, any others? Joanna, or Deja, anything you have faced recently about yeah, layout?
I think probably layering it to the left or the right.
Okay, so maybe okay, so there's two things there. One is like layering, like one layer on top of each other. That we're not going to touch on today. The other thing is like if you want to have like elements next to each other, let's say you want 2 columns, right, or 3 columns or whatever. Let's say you want that in without, let's say without grid, for example, or without flexbox. So that's a good one. We can, and the box model, if we understand the box model, we can be able to do that and how it's done. So let's say like let's say columns or side by side layout. Cool. Like I think one example of that could be this. If we do one example of that could be this, right? And this is actually something we'll tackle. How do you have these 2 lists here side by side, right? We'll take a look at that. Okay, any other layout challenges? What if, okay, actually, we'll talk on it here. Okay, so then the CSX box model. So the CSX box model says everything in a page is a box, right? And we could actually see that. We could actually see that if we do. So I have this website here. This was actually a website from 7.0 admissions workshop. I'm gonna share this in the chat. So I have this I have this website, and then here I just said everything is a box, right? If we want to visualize that, what we could do is we could say start to select all elements. Let's put a border around each one. Let's do border 1 pixel solid red. And we can see that everywhere where there is a box, then that box has a border. And we can then kind of literally see that everything in the page is a box. Even Saturday is a box. If we look at why Saturday is a box, let's take a look at the HTML here. So there is a span wrapping that Saturday word, and then that becomes its own box. And you can have boxes within boxes, right? So that's the first part of like the box CSS box model. Everything is a box. Now we're gonna see what are the parts of that box and how do they behave. And there's 2 types of boxes that we'll see. 2 main types of boxes that we'll see, and we'll understand how those 2 types of boxes can change behavior depending on what type we have. Cool. So then, yeah, we can see that the image is its own box. We can see that each li items are its own boxes. The like button is its own box, etc. Cool. Okay. Any questions up until this point? Everything's a box. Okay. So now that we know that everything is a box, we can see the parts of the box. So there are multiple parts of the box. So there is, let me open this in a new tab, see if we can see it a bit larger. So this is really the box model. The box model is, okay, there is a box and every element is a box and there are parts of that box. So the first is, actually, this is, yeah, let's run with this. We can see a few different visualizations. So there is, this as a whole is the box, including these outer gray lines. Now the box, the innermost part of the box is known as the content box. That's where if you put stuff inside of a div, let's say we have a div, and we put inside of that div an image or in some text, those other elements will be in the content box. Now, that's the innermost kind of container. Now, after the content box, we have the border box, and the border box is anything that's outside of the content box, but it's inside of the margins. Yeah, actually, I think this is not a great visualization. Let's look at here. Let's look at this one here. So there's the element content goes first, then the padding is surrounding the element content, then the border surrounds the element content and the padding, and the margin surrounds everything inside the border, the padding, and the element content. And there's this is one visualization. This is another visualization. Let's take a look at this one because it's also a bit worth seeing that. So here they talk about, so the innermost box is the content box. Now they say the content box is delimited by the content edges, which are these black edges that we have. And there is a content width and a content height. Then outside of that, we have the padding area. This is called the padding area. This is the content area, the padding area, and then there is the padding edge, and these are padding edges here on the white. And then there is the outside of that, there is the border edge, or there's the border area, and the border area is between the padding edge and the border edge, all around the box. And lastly, there is the margin area. The margin area is all completely outside of the content, padding, and the border. And that goes, the margin area is between the margin edge and the border edge. So all of these are actually valid visualizations for the box model. This one, this one. Any questions or thoughts here? Okay. No questions from Joanne. Sihan. Okay. So then the box model is all elements are boxes, and the box as a whole has some areas, different areas. It has the content area, the padding area, the border area, the margin area. Yeah, great. Now, then let's come back here. Oh, this grew up quite a bit. Cool. Well, actually, I think I can close this. Okay. Cool. Do you know how to inspect? Anyone knows how to inspect the box model on any page of any element?
The sources at the
Say that
top
again.
in the inspector, is it sources? When you do the inspect,
When we do inspect, okay, yeah, let's do inspect. Let's say we want to inspect, actually, let's say we want to inspect this ad. I'm going to do right click, inspect here. Okay.
You see the box in your right hand. It shows you all elements inside.
Exactly. So then here, this is the border box. Let me make that a bit bigger. Sorry, not the border box. This is the box model for this element. Oh, but now that the ads disappear if I make this too big. Let's just inspect another element. Let's inspect this code. Yeah. So yeah, here we can see sometimes if it doesn't appear here on the right side for you, it might appear on the bottom. I actually don't remember. Let's see. I actually don't remember. Sometimes I think at some points, some of you might not show here, but it might show all the way at the bottom here on this side. It's hard to tell exactly where it will appear.
One is full screen sometimes. One is full screen.
Great. But then yeah, this is what I wanted to show you here, just to make you aware that this is the box model. So you can see that the content, and you can even see it highlighting on the right side. The content is the innermost area. Then there is some padding, and then we can see that that's kind of highlighted. The content is highlighted blue. The padding area is highlighted kind of green. You can see here what the paddings are. 14 on the left side, 20 on the right side, 15 on the top, and 10 at the bottom. This has no border and has no margin. Those are 0. We can see the boxes here. So this is the box model. Now we say here, let's actually add a little bit of stuff. We could say, let's say border 1 pixel solid aquamarine. Let's make that a bit bigger so we can see it. Let's say 10 pixels. Now we can see that the box now has a border around it. Oh, interestingly enough, it didn't update it here. Maybe I have to write it in the CSS. Like in a CSS file. It should appear here, but I guess we can see that when I hover over the border box now, it gets highlighted on the page. Cool, and then we can see that the border area is dictated by this pixel amount, right? How thick, like, is this the border area is dictated by how thick the border is, right? And then this has no margins. If we were to put some margins, let's say margin is 20 pixels. Oh, this is, so actually this is helpful, I think. Yeah. We can see that the margin now, oh, now it applied. I don't know, maybe it was kind of a bug that it was taking a little bit to reload. But now the border appears. Now the margin also appears, and we can see it highlighted. Cool. And then we have, so this is the box model, and then we're gonna learn a few other things about it. Any questions or thoughts up until this point? Okay. Great. So one interesting thing here might be, let's see, let's check out this background. Yeah, so one thing we can learn No, so that's not the background. What is applying the color of this box? Let me see. Code. So whenever you want to inspect on why something is a certain way, what you could do is what I like to do is go to compute it here. Oh yeah, that's when the box model doesn't appear, what you could do is click on compute it, and then that is going to make it appear. So here, I'm gonna search for this code element we're searching, and I'm gonna search for background. Cool, and then we can see that there is some background, background attachment scroll, clip color image, none. Color, there is a background color set, but that's set to like transparent. So then this is telling me that that grayish color or blackish color, the background is not being set in the code. Let's take a look at this element, the pre. Now we can see that then that background is being set here. The pre element, which is the parent of the code, is the actual one that has the background here. And then once you in the background, yeah, these are some sort of debugging tricks for CSS. If you want to find out where in the code that's being set, you can click this little arrow. Oh wait, hold on. Yeah. And then the arrow will highlight the piece of code that is given in that background. And if this was our code, this, we could click on this link, this line, and this is going to be where we will find it. This is a style CSS and some crazy line number for this CSS, because I guess this website has a lot of CSS. So let's try an experiment here. What if I say here, erase this, and then let's give this a background, a different background. Say background color, RGB, yeah. Let's make it semi-transparent. So RGBA, let's say 100, 100, 100, 0.5. And then I'm just going to change the color. We click on here. Yeah. Okay, cool. Oops. Cool. So I guess what I wanted to show you here is that the background, if we give it, I'm going to give it a semi-transparent border, semi-transparent border. And then let's make the background a very strong color. So a very red and intense color. I guess what I wanted to show you here is that the background property is not just for the content box. You can see that right now I'm highlighting the content box, and then the text is being highlighted, but you can see that the background red color is going outside of that. So the background actually covers the padding as well. And it actually covers the border. It goes to the background of any element will go to the outer edge of the borders. So you see that this border is semi-transparent. In fact, if we make it, yeah, something like that, we can see that the red is still going behind the border. Anyway, that was sort of a side note that maybe you didn't know about background. Background will go out. But also notice that background does not go out of the margins. So the margins are there to push content to push neighboring content away from the box, right? That's the margin. So that's why the border, the background does not go out into the margin area, because the margin is like the outside, the external side of the box. Okay. Questions or thoughts up until this point? Cool. All right. So now we know that everything is a box. And then these are the 4 properties. These are the 4 key properties for the box model. The height and the width for the content box, the padding, the border, and the margin. So let's list those here. Let's say content. These are really, so actually, I guess we can do this. Other properties. And these are sort of key CSS box model properties. And then put that here. So content, actually, so content is not really a property. Width, height, margin, border, padding. Okay. Other properties, so we saw kind of background and box sizing. We're gonna see box sizing in a little bit. Okay, let me see. Where do we go from here? Cool. So from here, I said earlier that the box models also kind of dictates that there's two different two main types of boxes. Does anyone know what those type of boxes are?
Can you repeat?
Yeah, I said earlier that there's two types or two kinds of boxes. And I'm asking if you may remember what those two different types of boxes are, and how they are different.
Is flex box one of them?
Okay. Yes, but if so, Flexbox is a type of box, but is not one of the two basic ones. Let's do
Inline is one. Yeah, sorry.
Types of boxes. So let's see. We have inline. Okay, we also have Flexbox. And then grid is another one, right? But there is one here. There's another one here after inline. Who remembers what that one is called?
Block.
That's correct. Thank you, Deja. A block. So you can say block box, or we can skip an inline box and a block box. Okay. For this, we're gonna focus on these two. Like Flexbox and grid are kind of there are other types of boxes. And we like those kind of deserve a session on their own, just like we had in our curriculum. Cool. Okay, so what do we know? What do we know about inline boxes? What do we know about block boxes?
The block boxes, it takes like the whole width, and the inline, I don't know how to explain it. It goes like, if there is any gap, it goes straight like with the other one.
Yeah, like fills it in.
Wait, say that one more time for the inline. Let's see how.
Yeah, I said the inline, like for example, when there is a gap, is gonna go straight, like to fill that's an empty space. It's gonna be on one line. Really.
Okay. Yeah, it's gonna be in one line. Let me see how could I summarize that.
It kind of like snaps like right behind each other, like you know, like it's a flow kind of. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So one way is, so block boxes create a line break after them. Inline boxes do not create line breaks after them. Well, this is, and then this makes them appear, they appear on the same line. Okay, what about, so what are some examples?
Span?
So what is span a inline box
Inline.
or, okay. What are others? Inline or block?
I think inline anchor is the anchor tags, you know, flow that way.
Which one? Which one?
The anchor tags.
Anchor tags. So the A, yes, those are inline. What else? Oh, one thing here. So block elements occupy all available width. An inline box or an inline element occupies only so occupies space necessary for its content. That's it. It doesn't occupy the entire width. Only this occupies the space necessary. Okay. Other examples of inline boxes are actually the image is an inline, and the image. So image is actually an image is an inline replace box, and we'll touch on that again. Replace element, an inline replace element, and these are inline non-replaced elements. And yeah. Okay, yeah, these are some examples. The B element or the strong, those are all good examples. Now what about block box or block elements?
Like this.
Div, okay. Div, what else?
Header.
H1, etc. One more, join.
The li, the list.
List items. Correct. Cool. Okay, so then glad to see we have some clarity in the inline elements versus the block elements. Cool. Yeah. These are key features of them. Okay. So then here you can see that these elements have a default. They are by default inline boxes, and these elements are by default block boxes. But we can change that. We can change what they are using the display property, and we'll take a look at that. Let's see. Okay. So I think there's 2 more points, and then we can get into the exercise. So the next point, actually, let me move this zoom controls over here. And then let me go back here. I'm gonna refresh this. Cool. Yeah, so we looked at that. Oh, this is important. So the size of the entire, or if any entire box really is calculated by this. So we can say the total width is going to be the width of the content box plus how much padding there is on the left side plus the padding on the right side plus how much border there is on the left side plus how much border there is on the right side. Note that we don't count the margin. Right, the margin, again, the margin is kind of external space that pushes all the elements on the sides. The total height of an element is the same as the width, but just with the padding top, the padding bottom, border top, border bottom. So if we want to find out the total size, like how much space, how much sort of total space an element is occupying, we could do that just with this formula. Count what height is the element, if it has any padding, top and bottom, and if it has any border. Let's just add up all that together, and then we end up with the with the kind of total height or width of the element. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So let's see. So what if this is a question. This is a question for you. So what if we have some elements in the page and we never set the height or the width? What would be their dimensions?
I think.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me more. So what do you mean by default? What exactly is default?
For example, when we said like for the blocks, it's gonna take the whole width, and if for the height is gonna take default, like the content is inside.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Yes. So then you said it correctly, which is for block elements, they will occupy all available space vertically. And then in terms of their height, they will be as tall as their content, as tall as it needs to be to fit all their content. That is correct. So the width of block level boxes. So let's take a look at this example. If you don't declare a width and the box has a static or relative positioning, we can take a look at this. The width will remain 100%. The width will remain 100% in width, and the padding and the border will push inwards instead of outward. But if you explicitly set the width of the box to be 100%, the padding will push the box outward as normal. Let's take a look at this. So this box, we have a parent with 300 pixels wide. Then we have a div inside with this box has a 20 pixel of padding, but no set width. So then that is because the block occupies all available space. Oh, and I guess now there we can say a block element will occupy all the available width of its parent, really. Right in here, the parent is 300 pixels. And then this inner div will occupy that space. Now, in this case, where we have the box going outside, we have this box has a 20 pixel of padding, right? Just like the one on top. And the width is set to 100%. So the width is set to 100%. Any ideas as to why does this box go out of the parent. Oh, I think Joanne might have lost connectivity.
Is that maybe like of the padding?
Say that again.
Is that because like of the padding? We have like on
yes and no. Yes, because well, but more like there's the padding and the width plane here. From those two, the width is really what's causing the issue or this behavior. Because you know this box here also has a border, a padding of 20 pixels. Let's replicate this example here in our code here. Let's say we have I'm gonna have a div here. And let's call it, what should we call it? Let's just call it let's say class parent. And then in here we're gonna have two divs. Let's call it class first. Say first, and we'll do first and let's say second. Second, let's do second child. First child, second child. And then we're gonna have just some text. We're gonna, where do we get that text? Let's just say lorem ipsum. No. Lorem ipsum generator. We just need a little text from here. Oh. Here. Let's just have both boxes have the same content. Okay, now we are seeing them here at the bottom. These are the two boxes. Now what we're gonna do is, actually I'm not gonna remove this. This was just for visualizing all the boxes. And I'm gonna say parent is going to have a width of, say width of 300 pixels. We're gonna say background color gray. Right, okay. Let's also say, yeah, let's do just that. Here we're gonna do the first child. The first child will have a padding of we said, let's say 1 EM. And we can then see that element, now the pattern, there is a pattern around it, right? Now let's say, let me take a look at that again. Okay, so that the actual, those have backgrounds themselves. So let's do that here. Let's say, so we can put this a different background. Let's say this is yellow. Cool. And then the first child will have a background color of gray. I can see that that is that. Now the second child, we will say we're gonna do the same as the first child. We now has a padding, and we can see that. So this is kind of important for us to note that when let's comment that out. So you see that the parent box is staying at 300 pixels, right? It is not, it's staying at 300 pixels wide. When we do padding, the content, the inside gets pushed, the content gets pushed inside, and the box, the parent, is still 200 pixels. Padding doesn't change anything on the parent box, right? The padding doesn't change anything on the parent box. It pushes the content, and it does make the parent a little bit taller because now less words fit on the same line. So the parent does become taller for that. But now let's give this one another background color. Background color of, let's say, I'm gonna make it semi-transparent, RGB A. Let's do 100, 100, 100, 0.5. Let's do R. Let's do 50. Yeah. Okay. Up until this point, everything's good, right? Now, then, when we say with 100%, we see this, and then that is going outside. Let me say, say 200 here. I want a different, yeah, like sufficiently different color. So when we say with 100%, now it looks like the box is going outside of the parent component, of the parent div. So here's then my question again. Any ideas as to why that happens? Because like this is like, I remember when I was learning, this was a source of frustration for me. Whereas like, but I'm telling the second box to be as wide as the parent. Why is it going outside? Why isn't it kind of, I was thinking, why isn't it respecting the 100% width? So any ideas?
Is it being overwritten by the parent div? Since it's being set to 300 pixels in the parent, so this child, it overwrites the 100%.
So no, it doesn't really overwrite it. The parent is still, if it would overwrite it, like we could see it sort of pushing the parent to be wider than 300, but it doesn't really overwrite it.
Because when we read the CSS, we read it from the top to the bottom.
That one here, no, that doesn't apply here either.
Doesn't apply?
Let's see. Yeah.
Okay.
But one last either Lauren, Deja, or Ashia.
I don't know. It's something about the parent box. It just seems like it's
maybe something with the padding.
Okay, let's talk about it here. So it's actually, so let's do So yes, it's the padding, but more than the padding. So there's two properties here at play for the second child. Let me bring that back down. For the second child, there's two things at play. One is the width and the padding. But what did I do? Let me put this here. There's two things at play here, which are explained by the box model. These are explained by the box model. So the reason why we see that, so if we remove the padding, then now the box is fitting. So then I guess like the answer could be, yeah, it's because of the padding. But that also happens. So if we put the padding back and we remove the width, then the box is now also fitting. So then which one is it? Is it the padding or the width? And the answer is that it's both. Right? So this goes back to this line here. Remember that the total width of an element is calculated by the width and any padding left and any padding on the right. So what happens here, and any border left and any border right, it's just that our box doesn't have a border. So what's happening here is that we're saying, so this width, so this might be this was one of like the aha moments for me. When you say width, you're actually saying the width of the content area. Now that we saw that the content area is the innermost, anything, if it's padding, if it's border, or if it's margin, it goes outside, right? So here we're saying, okay, the inner content area will be 100% of the parent, which is 300. And then to that, we added a padding all around the box, which means that we have 1 EM on the left side and 1 EM on the right side. So to that 100%, we need to add 1 EM on the left side and 1 EM on the right side, which ends up being, oh, this is like another kind of CSS debugging trick. So let's say we want to find out exactly, like in pixels, how much that would be. So then I'm going to inspect here, and then I'm going to highlight over here. So we can see our div there, the second child. We can see our box model here. Again, remember that it doesn't appear on the right side to you. If you go to compute it, you'll be able to see it there. So we see our box, and this is the content box, right? And you can see that 100% translated to 300 pixels, and we can see that here. Cool. And then the padding for the second child, 1 EM translated to 16 pixels. So now the total width of our element is really 300 plus 16 plus 16, which that will be 32, right? So 332 the width. So that means that our child here is coming out. It's coming out 32 pixels out of the parent. Cool. And then here, if you want to see, just as we debug here further, let's say we're searching for the width of our box. And then here you can see that the width of our box, of the second child box, it says 300 pixels. And if you want to see what is giving those 300 pixels, you can click on this thing here. And then you can see that there is something on the style that is selecting the second child that says that is 100%. So basically, so this is why this tab is called the computed tab, because here you get whatever the actual values that some measures computed to. So 100%, you can actually see what that computes to here in the computer tab. You can just search for the property you're interested in, and then it tells you exactly in pixels what that translates to. So for example, let's look at the padding as well. So do padding. So we can see padding. So we can actually see them individually here: padding left, bottom, padding left, padding right, padding top. And we see that 1 EM that we set here is computing to 16 pixels. And if we expand that, we can see that second child is being targeted with a padding bottom of 1 EM. 1 EM is 16 pixels is the default for 1 EM on browsers. 1 EM is 1 unit of the font size. Or sort of like 1 unit of the font size, or one font size. One font size. And the default in most browsers, even on mobile phones, for font size, the default font size is 16 pixels. So 1 EM is one of the font size, which is 16. Okay, so any questions or thoughts on this example here? So who can summarize one more time why this box is going outside of the parent?
So basically, when we see the box, if the parents, it includes the border, the padding, and the content. So when we took the child, is gonna have the width as a parent, and as we add in the padding, also is gonna be included in padding, and that's why like is off from the right, and we have the 16 in the right and 16 in the left. So basically, we're gonna have 32 pixels adding then with the width of the parents.
That's correct. That's yes, because the total width, or the total width occupied by an element, is the width of the content box or the content area plus the padding area, plus the left and right side of the padding area, plus the border, left and right border and margin. That's correct. And then if we say here that the second child will be 100% width, that means the content area. So this width is really the innermost box, the inner box area, and that's just going to be 100. 100% of the parent, and the parent is 300 pixels. So then that's 300 pixels. Cool. Okay, any questions or thoughts here? Okay, so the height is the same thing. The height will be the same thing if we had, let's say, actually, yeah, let's try it with this. Let's say, yeah, here's a question. So I'm gonna say the first child height, I'm gonna set the height to, let's say 300 pixels. So the question here is, why is the first child not going out of the parent? What would you say? This was one is because one of the reasons is because one of the things we said about block boxes here, or actually maybe we didn't say that. Yeah, we didn't sort of say very explicitly about block boxes.
But the first child, it doesn't have a padding. Oh no,
It does have a pattern.
it does have a padding.
Why doesn't it go out of the parent? Okay, what you should, yeah.
It's not in respect of the parent's width, no?
Say that one more time.
Okay, no, never mind.
Not the full height of the whole like box, so it's not. It's short. If it's longer, then it would start to overflow.
Okay, one more time.
So the content, like it's not.
The content of what box?
We're talking about the height, right? And why it doesn't overflow, correct? Is that
Yeah.
what we're asking?
Why? Yes.
Okay.
Why the first child doesn't overflow?
So I'm guessing the first child doesn't overflow because it's like equal to the actual like the whole thing. Like it's hard for me to explain. Like
What
but
about?
it's
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, let's change the question. How could we make the first child overflow the parent? I'm gonna put a border around the parent so we can see what the bounds of the parent is. Border. Let's say 3 pixels solid red, just for us to see. So this is the first child. Is this child? How could we make the first child overflow to the top or the bottom of the parent? So the answer to the question, why doesn't the first child overflow at the top or the bottom of the parent, is the same as how could we make it overflow?
It has to be bigger than the parent. And I guess changing the pixel size to make it larger than the actual parent is the way, because
Okay, so let's make,
yeah.
So I think you're onto something. Let's make the first child a really big size. Let's say 12,000 pixels. Actually that's 1200 pixels. So still not overflowing, still within the bounds of the red box. So I think this is the point that I want to drive you to. So what's going on here?
I think, doesn't it have to do with content in the first child?
Content is the first child. This is the content of the first child. Yeah. What about it?
Isn't it smaller than the entire parent?
Yes, it is smaller than the entire parent. So then I guess yeah, that kind of explains why it's not going overflow, right? Because the child will always be smaller than the parent. But then sort of why is that? Why is the child always smaller than the parent?
If you put instead of a pixel, a percent for the height of the first child.
Let's say, so actually I think let's do 200%. So heights, percentages heights are a bit tricky, which we could get into it well, I don't think we'll have time to get into percentage for height. But we can see that we came back to the original box size. Okay, but so this is something that we didn't touch on. But let's say, let's put it back to 300 pixels, right? And then we can see that the box grew. And maybe I was giving too many turns, but one thing we didn't say here is that we said that the block box will occupy all available width. But we didn't say anything about the height of the block box. So the height of the block box is how could I describe it? The height of the block box let's say as tall. The block box will be as tall as its content, right? So the block box by default will be as tall as its content. That's what we're seeing here, right? The content of the parent, which is the block box, is the first child. And then if the first child grows, then the parent grows in height to fit the child. Does that make sense there? So block boxes width will be as wide as the available width of the parent. In terms of height, they will be as height as their content. There is no kind of the default is any block box will be as tall as their content, right? And then again, first and second child are part of the content of the parent, and if any of these grows, then the parent grows to accommodate them. Okay, so then so the answer to the question, why doesn't the first child overflow the parent, is because the parent will grow to fit the child, right? Now then the other side of that question, which is, okay, how could we make it overflow? Now that you know that, how could we make the child overflow in its height, the parent, knowing that the parent automatically grows to fit the child?
Do the height like 100%?
On the child or the parent?
On the child.
Well, we already tried that, and we saw that it was the same. You said like here 100%. They gave us the same. So let's do 300 pixels. So because by default the height of any block element will grow to fit its content, what we need to do to make the child overflow, if for some reason we wanted that, will be to constrain the height of the parent. So if we say the height is if the height is, let's say the height is 200 pixels, we see that then the child is overflowing the parent. We see that the parent kind of ends here at this red line, and it's overflowing. The child is overflowing the parent. This just made me think about, like, if we wanted to overflow inside, or not inside, if we wanted to overflow at the top, yeah, I'm actually not sure how we could do that. If we wanted to say, let's say we wanted this div to overflow on the top instead of the bottom, so that this one is still within the box. I guess like from here we learn that when an element overflows this parent in height, it overflows below the element, not on top. Okay, any questions up until this point? Chihan, maybe?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, so let's keep going down here. So we learned about that. So this is another kind of interesting point. So it turns out that when boxes, when you absolute position a box and they don't have a set height and width, they will be, so let's say we have, let's say with this title, right? We see this title is a block element. I'm gonna grab it here. And when we do, let's say H1, I'm gonna add a background for us to see it. Just gonna grab this background. And then if I say display, or not display, position, absolute, top 0, let's say right 0. We see that happens. So this is so what we did here is we removed the H1 from the normal flow of the page. When you remove the element from the normal flow of the page, then it stops occupying all the available width. And it only the width and its height will just will be as big as needed to fit their content. The height and the width will be as big as needed to fit the content. Cool. That's so that's like something to have in mind. We can if we give it a width, then that width will be respected. Let's say width 500 pixels, that will be respected. Let's try a height. 300 pixels. That's also respected. Cool. So absolutely position block elements, they become as big, as wide, and as tall as they need to be to fit all their content. Any questions or thoughts on that? Okay. So let's see. Okay, so then the inline elements are boxes too, right? We talked about that at the beginning. Now with inline boxes, things are there are some things their behavior is different. So what do we have? We have, let's say this link. We said that a link is an anchor tag is an example of an inline box, right? And then we said that they occupy the space necessary for its content. Now let's say let's put a div, let's put a border around it so we can see it. CNN link. Say CNN link, let's say border 2 pixels solid yellow. Actually, that's a hard color. So do blue. To see. Cool. So we see that little box there. Now, into this box, let's apply some width. Let's say with 100 pixels. Right, and then this happens. Oops, didn't mean to click on that. Oh no. We see that the width did not apply. Let's try some height. Let's try 200 pixels height. Okay, let's inspect this to double check. So we have our box here. We're saying the width 100 pixels, 200 pixels. Let's make it something exorbitant so we can see. So the box model here is showing us 500 pixels and 200 pixels. But here we can still see, I guess this is something to watch out for. We see that the box model here is telling us that that length is 500 pixels by 200 pixels. But you can see as I hover over the anchor tag, that pop-up, do you see that pop-up on the screen on when the CNN link gets highlighted? That is telling us that's 37 pixels by 22 pixels. So here you might wonder what is going on. Why isn't the height and the width applying? The reason for that is, let's take a look at here. Right. Okay, so what we can do is let's just go to the documentation. Let's do CSS height. So we go to documentation here. And I like, okay, so then here we can see the following. You can see formal definition. Initial value is auto. And then here is applies. It applies to all element, but non-replace inline elements like table, columns, and column groups. So here we now know what inline elements are. We say, but non-replace inline elements. So non-replace, replaced inline elements, the example is an image. An image is a replaced inline element. The reason why, so this image, let's take a look where that image is. I'm gonna remove this div from that image, just so we can appreciate. So we see that, so we were talking earlier here that an inline box would appear, inline boxes appear next to each other. They appear on the same line. They do not create line breaks after them. So here, what we're seeing is this image and this link, and even if there was some other text here, right? All of that is appearing on the same line. And then the image is an inline element because it appears on the same line. And then this anchor is an inline element. If we say this is a span, this is also an inline element, right? And then we saw, so on the image, we can say image, let's say height 50 pixels, width 50 pixels, and then we have our sun being able to be that height. But you see that that an image is an inline replace element. What that means is like when you think about replace or non-replace, think about embedded. That it comes from an external source and is embedded here, right? This image comes from the source, which is quite literally an external source, and is embedded here. So then the image is a replaced element. This anchor tag doesn't come from outside, is in our pages, in our code, and it is not a replace element. So if we go back to the documentation, then this should start to make a little bit more sense. Applies to all elements, but non-replace inline elements. So non-replace inline elements are the anchor tag, the spans, what others do we see? Strong, etc. All those are inline. So then now we understand why this is not giving us the right result. When we say a width and a height on the CNN link, that is this is a non-replace inline element. That means height does not apply to it. Any questions or thoughts on that point? Okay, so what if we wanted to make this wider? For some reason, we wanted this link to be wider. How could we do that? If width doesn't work, what other ideas or thoughts do you have? No ideas?
Maybe to add it like to the parents,
To add what to the parent?
the width.
Let's see. Well, that would just make the parent bigger, but it wouldn't make the child bigger. So let's see. Okay, so there's basically two ways. One is we could make this, and I guess I clicked the link again. There's two ways. One way could be if we make the CNN link, if we change the type of box it is with the display. If we say display inline block. So if we change what type the box is, then that the width and the height is respected. We can see how it grew. So I guess like from here, then we learned you can change the type of the elements by the display type, this display property. And we can say, if we say block, now we see that it occupies its own line because we learn blocks, elements, break lines, and they occupy all the available width. Yeah, if I remove the width from here, then we see that will be the entire space. The height is respected, the width is respected. Display block. When I say inline block, I'm saying I want it to behave like a block, but I still want it to be inline. That's really what that means. Let's look it up here. Inline in block. Inline elements, insert inline. Oh no. CSS inline block. Layout. Display. Inline block. Inline block. The elements generates a block level blocks, a block element box that will be flowed with surrounding content as if it were a single inline box, behaving much like a replaced element would. And the replaced element that we saw was the image. So the image respects the height and the width, and is equivalent to inline flow root. Now, so there here we also have, oh, those are legacy. What does that mean? Box, display box, contents none, internal. Because this is more, has more than, yeah, this is actually something I didn't know, outside and then inside. But we can make it block, we can also make it inline. We can, with the display property, we change what kind of box. Let's see, display property sets whether an element is treated as a block or an inline element, and the layout used for its children, such as flow layout, grid, or flex. Formally, the display property sets an element inner and outer display types. The outer type says the element participation in the flow layout. The inner type says the layout of children. Oh, this is interesting. I actually didn't know this. Some values of display are fully defined in their own individual specification. So like display flex is its own thing. Okay, but yeah, for the most part, we just want to know that we change that. So we change this link to be an inline block, and now height and width are respected. To my initial question, where is, let's say we don't want to do that. We just want to make this link wider, maybe not taller. If we want to make it taller, if we want to make it wider, instead of setting the width, what we could do is set some padding on the sides. So let's say 0 and let's say 20 pixels. 0, 20 pixels, right? That made it wider. So the padding is respected on inline elements, same as the border. Let's try margin. Let's say margin left, let's say 50 pixels to see if we see any changes. Nice. The margin is also respected on the inline boxes. We made that go all the way. Now, if we wanted to make it taller and we don't want to change the type, the only option we have is to make an inline box bigger. We can set the line height. Line height, let's say, let's set it to 100 pixels. Oh, okay. So we see that actually didn't, let's see. CNN link. Yeah, so actually this one is one I'm not too sure then. Let's say line height, 100 pixels. But we see that the box didn't grow. Yeah, I think I'm in unexplored territory here. The line height doesn't push the borders around, which is another thing of its own then. I guess, let's see, wait, what if we want padding all around? Would that increase the size of the box? Oh, okay, that's what I actually then meant. Yeah, if we want to make the box taller, we could use some padding. We could use some padding for that job. Okay, so the last part, or any questions or thoughts up until this point? Okay, no from Zihan. Ashia, Joanne, any thoughts or questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you for the confirmation. I guess so. If we wanted to, okay, so we now know that we can turn an inline box. Oh, keep clicking. We can turn an inline box into a block box. We could also do the opposite. We could do a blocks element, turn it into an inline element. So we can see, for example, this shopping list that we have here, which is a div. And then there is another to-do list here. Those are two divs are block elements. So that means they're occupying the entire width and they're creating a line break after them. If we do, let's say, let's grab them both. Let's say shopping list, and we'll say display. Actually, let's grab both. So shopping list, comma, to-do list. I want to say display inline. Let's see what happens. Display inline. Shopping list, to-do list. Okay, let's see if that's applying. Maybe I am not targeting it correctly. Shopping list, style, display inline. Oh. Okay. Interestingly enough, we see that those divs now have no height, even though we can kind of see it. So these are, yeah, this is why sometimes CSS is hard. Because I don't know if you can see the little pop-ups that are appearing on the right side when I hover over it, that says the width is 1016 pixels and the height is 94 pixels. But then here it says this auto. Right. So, but then actually what I think I wanted here, let's do inline is here. Let's search for inline, see if we can find any inline. The element generates one or more inline element boxes that do not generate line breaks before or after them. In normal flow, the next element will be on the same line if there is space. Browsers that supported two-value syntax on finding the outer value only, such as when display blocks or display inline is specified, will set the inner value to flow. This will result in the expected behavior. So actually then the documentation is not too clear as to what we're getting this. Let's try inline block. Yeah, this is actually then what I wanted. I wanted the two boxes to come next to each other as if they were on the same line. And now we accomplished that with display inline block then. Now those two elements are inline blocks. Oh, I guess actually, so this kind of makes sense if we have inline. This kind of makes sense that they don't become on the same line, because if you think about it, an inline element is not supposed to have any other elements inside. So that's something we could add here. Block elements, they're generally containers, have other elements inside. Inline boxes should not have, so they're not containers. They should not have children. Does that make sense? So my theory here, why this is why the browser doesn't understand this, or it doesn't, let's say, display. Yeah, I think the reason why the browser doesn't make this an inline I think, is because it says that, oh, those elements actually have some content inside. They have children, and inline elements are not supposed to have children. So I think in that the browser just ignores it. The browser just ignores it. Where if we say inline block, we're saying we want a block element, so allow it to have children, but we want it to be inline, so that we get this, so that we get the two divs next to each other in one line. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's leave it here. Any last questions or thoughts? I know that we saw quite a lot of stuff. But I'll share this. Oh, the very last property, box sizing. Box sizing. So now you know that there is these boxes, and they have different areas. They have the content area, the padding area, the border area, the margin area. Now the box sizing. So first, let's read about the box sizing here. Let's do box sizing CSS. Wait, have any of you used the box sizing before?
No.
Okay. You might see it like Bootstrap uses it by default. Some people like to think in box sizing. I kind of remember when I discovered it and I thought like, oh, it kind of can help make sense of things. So by default, the box sizing property says how the total width and height of an element is calculated. So we now know that when you set the height and the width, that is only applying to the content box, right? The innermost box in the box model, right? And then we say that to calculate the total width and the total height, we actually have to add up the width plus the padding left plus the padding right plus the border left plus the border right, and the height plus the content height plus the padding top plus the padding bottom plus border top plus border bottom. So box sizing changes how that is calculated. So the default is content box, which then this should kind of make sense, which is, so height and width, we said those apply to the content box, the innermost box in the CSS box model. Now, box sizing, so the content box is the default. Box sizing content box says width should apply to the content box and height should apply to the content box. So this is the example we saw. We see the child overflowing here, where we say the width is 100%. So the parent, we don't know what the parent is, but we know that the parent is some fixed size. And then we say the width is 100%. So then that means the content box of the child is going to be the same as the parent width, right? But then it happens that the child has a padding of 5 pixels, and he also has a border of 10 pixels. So then the total size is going to be 100% of the parent plus 10 pixels on the left side plus 10 pixels on the right side plus 5 pixels on the left side, of the padding, and on the right side, right? So that is with box sizes content. Now, what we could do with box sizing is change how the size is calculated. And if we have border box, this is what happens. We have border box and the width is still 100. Everything is actually still the same. The width and the border and the padding are still the same. But what happens is border box means when we set the width, don't set that width is not going to be for the content box. It's not going to be just for the innermost box. That width is going to be for the border box, right? And then we saw here that the border box is this guy here. So then that means that the border and the padding and the content are going to be inside of that. So when we say box size in border box, and then we say with 100%, we mean that with that 100% will apply to the box or to the border edges of the box, right? And then what turns out is that the content box, the innermost box gets shrinked so that we can fit that constraint, and then the border is still the same, the padding is still the same. Does that make sense? Any sense? Any thoughts or any questions? Maybe if it doesn't make sense, I also accept that. Any comments? Is this surprising? You did already know? You already knew?
I think it's a little bit of both. So I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I don't understand it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I totally get what I have been in that situation. I think to understand it, what we do is practice, really. So as I was saying, some like Bootstrap uses a rule. I think Bootstrap uses a rule like this, I think, where they say, like kind of at their top, they say, excuse me, they say star border box, box sizing. So this is, now we know that they're boxes. Now this can make sense a little bit more. Box, everything is a box, and then how are those boxes sized? So the default is content box, right? If we do that, nothing changes here. But actually, then this is because, so there's Bootstrap, and some developers like to set this for all elements to be border box, because when you say border box, then, and I remember this when I was learning, like width make a little bit more sense, but that was because I didn't fully understand the box model and how the height and the width and all of that was being calculated. So we see that when I say border box, now we see that our element here that was overflowing is no longer overflowing. The reason for that is because here we said for that second child, let's set a border of 2 pixels solid blue, and let's remove this for now. Right, so here I'm also going to remove this height of the child, so the first child size is not that big. And then let me also remove just the height. Okay, so we have the second child. Here we saw that, again, this 100% width is going to be, this width is for the content box, which is the innermost box in the box model. In this case, that's here. So we say with 100%, that means 100% of the parent is 300 pixels. Then here we see 300 pixels. So that content box, and then if we add any padding, if we add any border, that's outside of the box. That makes the box go outside of the parent, right? Because that's 300 pixels plus whatever we put on the sides with the padding and the border, right? So then this width, again, this width is just for the content box, the innermost box. When we change that to be border box, we can do it in a per element basis. We can say, I want the box size in here to be border box, what we're doing with that is we're saying, okay, so when we say width or a height, what we actually mean is we want that height to apply to everything inside of the border edges. That means the border itself, how big the border is, how big the pattern is, and how big the content is. Or in other words, basically, that means occupy from the border box, edges, anything inside should be 100%, and 100% of the parent, that's 300 pixels. So basically, it says distribute the. Oh, actually, so it's more like this. It's taking into consideration only the border edges, the border box edges. We want that to occupy 100%, to be as wide as 100% of the parent, right? Then the computer, what it will do is then it calculates. So, okay, maybe a way in which you could actually also kind of see it is when we do border box, the calculation is happening kind of outside in, where first starting from the border edges, 100% of the width, right? And then from there, the next one will be the border. So then it says, okay, from that, we need to shrink the content a little bit to fit the border. The border is 2 pixels on left and right. So then that's 4 pixels total. And then after that, let's calculate the padding. The padding is going to be 1 pixel on left and right. 1 pixel, not 1 EM, which is 16 pixels. So that's 16 on the left, 16 on the right. And then all of that should be within the 100%. And then any of the rest stuff will be available for the content. The remaining, basically, they are 100% minus the border, minus the padding on the left and right. Then the remaining will be what is used for the content box. And in here, we see that the content box now is 264 pixels wide. So again, this box sizing determines what the width and the height, or how, or in a few words, is it dictates how the box will be sized and what the height and the width will be applied to. The default is content box, which then takes in the width and the height for only the innermost area, the content area. We say border box, then the height and the width will be for anything inside of the border edges. And then if there is any border, if there is any padding, those will be inside of that width, and whatever is remaining is left for the content. Okay. Any questions or thoughts on that end? Thumbs up. Okay. 3 thumbs up. Great. So yeah, then as I said, border box is kind of, you can think of it as going inside out. Sorry, outside in, and then the default is inside out. The default is inside out, where the width is applied to the content box, and if there's any padding and if there is any border, that will go outside. Yeah, the calculation is kind of inside, inside out, or eyes, and border box is outside in. Okay, so I think we're not gonna have time for the exercise, but what I would recommend is you do the exercise on your own to exercise what we saw here. But let's do a little discussion. So here, so let's say you cannot use grid, you cannot use flex. Now what we just saw here, how could we get this 2 grid layout? that are 2-column layout that we have, like on the left side, a big box, on the right side, another tall box. And let's say, again, the constraints, you cannot use grid, you cannot use flex.
The inline blocks.
Okay, so just then have have two divs, and then set those two to be inline block. Then, and then yeah, we'll need to give them a width. We'll need to give them a width, and then when there is enough space, then they will fit on the same line. That's right. That'll be the same for this here. What else? What about this this navigation bar? How would you accomplish that? Joanne?
What?
Oh.
Just by leaving it as a inline.
Okay. Tell me more. Tell me more.
So usually, like the nav bar has like A tags, and those are usually like inline
Okay.
boxes.
Awesome. They're already inline boxes. How would you leave the space in between them? Because inline boxes are always next to each other. How could we put that space in between them?
The padding.
We saw padding, and we also saw that margin applies to inline boxes, so we could use those. Ashia, you're gonna say something. I don't know if it was covered already.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I think that is all. The exercise was going to be to recreate this page. Basically, I'm going to send this screenshot in the chat. I would recommend you still do it to test out, and then let me know if you run into any issues. Again, with the constraints of you cannot use grid, you cannot use flex. In fact, like a few years ago, CSS, like when was CSS grid introduced? You see, 2012. This is when I graduated from high school. Grid didn't exist before 2012. So, but people were still building websites like that newspaper page. Cool. Any last minute questions or thoughts?
I think you have a better understanding why sometimes was overflow.
Awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. Any other questions or thoughts?
I guess just thank you.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, thank you all for coming and listening. I'm sorry that we didn't get to do the hands-on exercise. Took more than I expected. But yeah, this is next time you're doing some width and some height, you can think about the box model. Okay, so here's the question with which we open, and the question with which we will close up is, what would your answer be if in an interview you get asked, what is the box model? What is the CSS box model? Okay, well, hopefully you'll find
maybe like a shorthanded way of having a shorthanded way of styling your content without I don't know. I don't
Okay,
know.
that's all right. So yeah, actually, I kind of realized that maybe I didn't dig too deep on that. But so first, let's say, like, what is model? And I looked at the definition. It says use a system, procedure, etc. as an example to follow or imitate, right? So the CSS box model is not a particular kind of, it's not a specific property or not a very particular thing. It's a model, right? And you follow a model, right? And a model is also kind of a way of thinking. So the CSS box model, the CSS box model is a model that dictates that elements in HTML are all boxes, and those boxes have different areas inside of them. The innermost area is the content area, surrounded by the content edges. Then the area after that is the padding area, which is delimited by the padding edges. Then the box after, or the area after that is the border area, delimited by the border edges. And then the outer side of the box is, the area outside of the box is the margin area. And then some sort of properties that affect that. So that model, so the CSS box model is that model, that elements are boxes, and then we have these different areas inside. And then different properties, these different properties, these kind of key properties allow you to modify those boxes, really. Cool. And I guess like the box model also dictates that there is two basic types of boxes. There's inline boxes and block boxes. And then we saw how they behave differently here. We clarify some of that. Cool.